Welcome to the 21st Century Reformation Hour. I'm Herman Otten, the editor of Christian News. What you're looking at right now are the 50 bound volumes of Christian News, over 2,300 issues. Now, I'll explain to you a little bit later on why we are beginning by showing you these 50 volumes. Paper this week here, which I have in front of me, which is being mailed right now, has as its lead story, Faithful Lutheran, Pastor Mark Frederick Bartling, 1939 to 2013. We have the sermon that was delivered at his funeral, a tremendous sermon, I'll get into that too, and also his obituary. Why are we spending so much time and space this week on Pastor Bartling? He was a young student when he came and visited us in New Haven some 50 years ago. And we have pictures of him in this issue from the time that he began, and we have many of the excellent articles that he wrote for us. Articles on the theology of the RSV translators, Christian education, a Reformation blessing, the theology of the cross, the historical critical method, his review of the Distant Triumph Song by Dr. Siegbert Becker. He was a tremendous writer. He started out in the Lutheran Church, Missouri, and he got his BA from Valparaiso University, graduated from Concordia Seminary Springfield, which is now Concordia Seminary Fort Wayne. But then he went into Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Church, and that's where he spent most of his ministry. Notice I say faithful Lutheran from beginning to end. His obituary was a tremendous obituary. I'm sure he prepared part of it before he died. Talks about his baptism, and that was also mentioned at the funeral. I did not have a chance to go to the funeral, but a son of mine, who happens to be a godson of Pastor Bartling, he was there at the funeral, and you have some pictures there. Okay, over here we have Bartling's defense of Koch and the Eighth Commandment. That is in this book here, The Christian Travel Guide to World History, in the Footsteps of Moses, Jesus, Paul, and Luther, by Dr. Henry Koch. Dr. Henry Koch was in Europe. He got his doctorate degree in 1919 from the University of Leipzig. He and Pastor Bartling were very good friends. Dr. Koch taught at Concordia Bronxville, where I also went to school, and that's when I first got to meet him. He was called, by a book published by CPH, as a public Nazi sympathizer. Pastor Bartling came to his defense, and that's part of it in here. This is a travel guide of all the different places that Pastor Koch visited, not only in Europe, but also you see here in Egypt, in the Holy Land, and in Greece. So we call it Walking in the Footsteps of Moses, Jesus, Paul, and Luther. Pastor Bartling has the foreword to the book here, and he talks about why this book is so important. Pastor Bartling, probably more than any other Lutheran pastor that I know of, visited throughout the world, particularly the Luther sites. And he recommended this for the people that he went on tours over there. Also, we have in the back of the book, we have something about Lutheranism from Wittenberg to the USA. You have a picture of Pastor Bartling there with about 48 that he took on a trip to Wittenberg and to Worms at the Luther statue. From Wittenberg to the USA. This is a volume, 920 pages, by Arthur J. Clement, where he talks about how Lutheranism came from Wittenberg, where Bartling had been so often, to this country. So he talks about all the different denominations. It's 920 pages. You can find it how it's available from Christian News. It's written by Pastor Arthur Clement. He also is the author of this book here, Prayers for the Worship Service. I use it every Sunday in our church services, also during Advent and Lent. It lies, notice it's a spiral bound. You can lay it on the altar, and it's very easy to use for pastors. I found this now the best prayers to use. Also on the front page this week we have What's Going On in the LCMS. Liberals, evolutionists, unionists, universalists, not disciplined. Again, we go back to that unionism involving President Obama that took place in Newtown, Connecticut. I'm sure you haven't read anything about it in the official publications. It was really unionism far greater than it was in after 9/11, when Dr. Benke was there in Yankee Stadium with Oprah Winfrey. They even read from the Quran, and all the religions, Baha'i, Muslims, they were all said, we all worship the same God. Lutheran Church Missouri Synod pastor took part in that. I again call this week, what's going on? Any discipline? They will not talk about it. Over here we have McGrath's story, devoid of the real Christ. McGrath was the main speaker at the Confessional Lutheran Conference that was sponsored by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod that drew 120 Lutheran theologians from throughout the world at Peachtown, Georgia. And the author here of the review is Craig Parton, a lawyer, very bright Lutheran lawyer. He reviews the latest book by Alistair McGrath, and he shows how Alistair McGrath really undermines historic Christianity. Now you wonder, why did they have him there when they could have had so many other competent speakers to speak at this particular affair? Beggars born on angels' wings. That's the sermon that was delivered at Pastor Barr's funeral. I conclude the back of the book by saying here, what sermons at funerals, what a sharp contrast. Now, Sam Musial, he was one of my heroes. I followed his baseball ever since I was in New York at Eppes Field. But the funeral, no comparison. Bartling's funeral by a Wisconsin Synod pastor is the kind of funeral that should be preached at every funeral of a Christian. This man is a sinner, regardless of all that he did, but he trusted only in Jesus as a Savior from sin. That did not come through by all the different comments that were made at Stan Musial's funeral. Well, God bless you. We'll see you next week. This passage I have in front was a theme of Pastor Bartling. I was determined to know nothing among you except Jesus and Him crucified.